Welcome to another live stream. I'm going to wait for a couple of people to come in, and then I'm going to start the stream where I'm going to be talking about writing strong heroines. Hold on for a second. I just need to let some people on Facebook and Twitter know that the stream is going on, and then we'll get started. Okay, writing strong heroines is the topic for today's live stream, and this is something I have a lot of experience in. I've been writing heroines ever since about 1999, and I started out writing, the first character I wrote was the ISIS character, who was featured in 2002's ISIS. So that was the first heroine I ever wrote in a story. But in addition to writing fantasy characters like ISIS and Eastteam, I've also written traditional heroines in other genres. This is ISIS. This is the first heroine I ever wrote. But I've also written heroines in other genres like romance and women's fiction. So my second heroine I wrote was a baker at a downtown Brooklyn bakery named Cassandra Lee. And that character I started writing in 2004. And that character was the main character in a novel called The Cassandra Cookbook. Now, this book is no longer in print as it is in this paperback. It has now been retitled A Recipe for Success. And this was the second heroine I wrote. And I wrote this in a romance novel to show my versatility and my skills in writing, and to show that you can write a heroine that is strong, but also write them in a traditional genre. Now, the third heroine I wrote was a faded former teen sitcom star named Marilyn Marie. And this character I wrote for a screenplay called All About Marilyn. Now, this character was one of the most complex heroines I had ever written. And this one was a story that really was one that people really liked. They liked this heroine. They liked how she had this great strength of character and how she overcame in the face of the greatest adversity in being forced to leave her Hollywood career and her life in Hollywood and then move forward and go out into the unknown. And that heroine was one of the most strong, one of the more popular heroines I ever wrote. Whenever I did review copies, people loved that character of Marilyn Marie. They liked this character, this faded former teen sitcom star, and they liked seeing her start this journey where she had to move past Hollywood and move past the Hollywood system and go out here and build a normal life in the world. So that was the third strong heroine I wrote. And the fourth one I wrote was Eastteam in The Temptation of John Haynes. And I also wrote another heroine after that, which was Colleen Anderson in this novel, The Thetas. Now, The Thetas was a story where we had this Black feminist who decided to pledge this sorority. And in this story, she learns about the other side of womanhood from traditional Black women. And she learns about the traditional Black female culture in this story and learns that feminism isn't all it was cracked up to be. So this was a story that again, this was one of my better selling novels. It was acclaimed all over the world, except for the people in the feminist community, but most women loved this novel, and it was one that really got over, to my surprise, more than I expected. Now, after that, I started working with another character the Matilda Crowley character, which was in Spinsterella. And this was a character that, again, I like so much and people like so much, I decided to bring her back for 2 more books, Spellbound and The Legendary Mad Matilda. So I have extensive experience writing heroines, and I have written them in multiple genres. So in addition to fantasy, I've written them in romance, I've written them in women's fiction, I've written them in young adult fiction. And when it comes down to heroines, I get a lot of positive feedback from readers who tell me that they're surprised that a man could write women so well. So when it comes down to writing strong heroines, the thing that every writer needs to understand, and everybody who wants to do things like superhero comics needs to understand, is that it's not about the physical power when you're writing women. It's about writing a great character and making sure that that character is someone that the reader can identify with and relate to, because that's going to be the strong point in selling that character to the reader, because the reader has to feel a personal connection to this character. And if they feel a personal connection to that character, that is what's going to motivate them to continue going out here to buy stories featuring that character and continuing wanting to read stories featuring that character. So when you have a book that features a heroine, that's the first thing you have to think about, is making sure that character is relatable to the reader and is someone they can identify with and that they can see themselves in that character. That's what people want in a story. And it's a major challenge to do that when you're writing something like a 250 to 300 page novels like the Spinsterella trilogy, or a 400-page book like the Thetas. So you have to keep the reader's attention for that entire book, and you have to make a story so compelling that people want to spend time with this woman and want to have a relationship with this woman. Now, whenever I'm writing heroines, I always think of that heroine as a character that I would want to spend time with. So whenever I create a heroine, one of the things I think about is what type of person would I want to spend time with this person. So I'm thinking about girls I would like to date, girls who I'd like to have a relationship with, and girls I would like to marry. So those are the 3 things I think about whenever I create a heroine in the concept stages, because I know that when these readers go out here and they go out here to buy a book, they want to have a relationship with that character. They want that character to be their friend, and they want to be able to feel comfortable about spending time with this person. Because when you have a 300, 400-page book, the reader is going to have this book in their hands for a good week, week and a half, or even a month. And if they decide to keep it, they're going to have this book for years. So you need to make this character a friend that they want to spend time with, and you want to make this character someone that they like spending time with. So I always try to do that with the character's personality traits and the character's voice and narration. So that's a key thing that I focus on whenever I start a novel or start doing the concepts for a novel. And that's something that you have to do when you're writing a strong heroine, is lay that foundation where we form a connection with the character, and that character is someone we want to spend time with. Because when you have a character, again, this is an investment of the reader's time. So when you have a heroine, she has to be someone who we identify with, who we relate to, and we want to form a personal connection with. So that's one of the foundations of it as related to the base for the character. But as we go along, you have to then further develop the character further, because I always start with the personality, the narration, and the voice first. Then I start focusing on other aspects of the character. Now, once I get the foundations of the character, again, which are those traits that make them relatable and identifiable to the reader, I then focus on the personality of the character. And the personality is another part that a lot of writers don't really focus on, especially in comic book writing, as related to heroines. And it always shows in their work. They never really focus on developing a strong personality in the character. And because they don't focus on developing a strong personality in the character, what happens is the character's voice does not resonate in the reader's imagination. So whenever I write a heroine, I always think about the personality, because when this reader has to sit there and read an entire book that's, again, 400 pages, or in the case of this is 255, I think, and this one, these two are about 300. So they have to really think about, you have to think about the personality and the voice, because that's part of the narration. And that's what the reader's going to imagine inside their head. So that's something you really have to think about when you're writing a story. I'm going to talk to some of the people in the chat. Hey, D Woodward. Hi, Mike and Supremo. I'm talking about writing and developing strong heroines in today's live stream. And again, I'm going in depth on it because so many people don't understand what it takes to write strong heroines. They think it's like Captain Marvel or your Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel, especially on the comic book side, where you're going to write this woman who has these great powers, but the whole thing is that this character has no real personality or real voice, and that really, or any sort of thing that makes us relatable to them. So that's why these books oftentimes stall out and don't really sell very well. Whereas women's fiction, like the Spellbound or the Thetas, these kind of books sell better than your attempts to write, the comic book industry's attempts to write superheroines, because they don't have a lot of depth, they don't have a lot of dimension, and they don't have a lot of layers. And that's what really impedes their ability to go out here and sell to readers. So whenever I go out here and I develop heroines, I always think about, again, those things. And then as I've laid that foundation, that's when I start going out here. And after I've built the personality and the voice, then I start focusing maybe on things that are external, because if you have to have a strong internal foundation when you're writing women, and that's what leads to people connecting with those characters and resonating with those characters. Now, you can do this with both the heroine and the villain in the story, and I did that when I was doing a book was called All About Nikki, which was the companion to All About Marilyn, because I wrote a companion book called All About Nikki that was filled with screenplays, and that was an international best-selling hit. And with that character, she was a rich, spoiled girl from Beverly Hills, and she had a really nasty attitude and nobody liked her. But to my surprise, when I published that book, I didn't expect it to do well, but people liked that character because I focused on, again, those building the foundation for that character's personality, building the foundation for that character's voice, and making that character relatable to the reader. And then also I did another thing, which was put that character in an experience that the reader wants to experience. Because one of the things I used to see with these, what they call so-called SJW books, is they want to give you these heroines, but then they don't want to put them in situations that people want to be in. I mean, when it comes down to women and men, they want to see women in situations, and they want to see them in situations that they can relate to. So like, for example, with the Cassandra Cookbook, I put the Cassandra Lee character in a situation where she was working to take care of her family's business. That was something most women could relate to, and it was something most men could relate to, because it showed that this was a character who cared about her family and also wanted to preserve her family's business. So there was the key point with that character. And with the Spellbound, with the Matilda Crowley character, I wanted to show that here was a character who was growing older and was growing up, but she wanted to continue maintaining her relationship with her father, and she wanted to show how much she loved her father. And with a heroine, that's what people like seeing in a heroine, is these type of situations. And just like in the Thetas, they want to see, oh, this black feminist, she's going to this sorority, and it's a situation that everybody can relate to. It's a situation everybody can identify with. And when I do those type of situations, I set those scenarios so that readers can learn and they can see this character grow and develop. And another part of seeing that character grow and develop is seeing this character having flaws. And this is another problem that a lot of comic superheroines have, is that the writers are too afraid to give the heroines any sort of flaws. And that's something that I always have no problem doing, because I like seeing characters with flaws, because when you have a character with flaws, that texture gives us something to hold on to, and it gives us something to connect with. And it's something that enables the reader to start saying that this character could be them, and that this character could be someone they want to be like. So this is something I would do extensively with characters I would create, like Isis or Eastine or Matilda Crowley or Marilyn Marie. I would always focus on their flaws, and it was those flaws that really made those characters really resonate with readers, because people would say, hey, this person isn't some incredibly beautiful woman. This is a person just like me. When I would see that you do exceptionally well with the Eastine character, who I designed to be this incredibly beautiful woman. But one of the things I learned from reading John Byrne's She-Hulk run was to really just focus on all the character flaws in that character. And I started showing how imperfect the character was. And it was showing how imperfect the character was in spite of her beauty that made her really relatable to customers. And in addition to making the character incredibly flawed, I also showed how the character, she kind of made mistakes and screwed up, but then she had a devil-may-care attitude about things. And that devil-may-care attitude allowed us to enjoy a laugh. And that's also another thing that is very key to writing heroines, is you have to interject some humor in the series, because a lot of people, they write these heroines like the Kamala Khans I've read, and I've read the Captain Marvels, and I read that Naomi, and those books were just so stiff, and they were just too serious, and they took themselves too seriously. And one of the things I do when I'm writing heroines is I always throw in a little humor. I always throw in a joke or two, because I know that the reader wants to escape. And what guy or girl wants to escape to a very stiff and wooden female? Nobody wants to spend time with a stiff and wooden female in real life, and they don't want to spend time with a stiff and wooden female with a 300, 400-page book. It just makes them annoyed, and it just really is irritating. It's like dealing with a boring person. And it just really is irritating and annoying. You don't want to spend time with an irritating you don't want to spend time with that person because they're boring. And that's what when I read these books like Kamala Khan, and I read Naomi, and I read many others, I read the Hex Wives and all these other books, they were extremely boring. And you don't want to be boring when you're writing a heroine. You want that heroine to be so compelling that when they pick up a book like a Spellbound, they're reading from the first page all the way to the last within the end of the week. I'm going to look at the chats again. Benny G is here. Hi, Annette Blue. I'm glad to see you. She's a new sub that's come in. And I was talking again about strong heroines and writing strong heroines. And again, it is an escape for people when they pick up a book like A Spellbound or a book like Spinsterella or a book like an ISIS series book. It's an escape, and you have to understand from the reader's perspective what they want to experience. And what they want to experience is to get away from their problems for an hour, hour and a half. And in that hour, hour and a half, you as a writer of the heroine have to give them something. And one of the things, again, I try to give people, in addition to an escape, is a laugh or a ability to solve a problem in their personal life, or an ability to see things from a different perspective, or the ability to see something in their lives that they have dealt with, or something that they could deal with in the story. That's what I want to give my readers in their story. So you really want to give your reader something whenever you go out here and you write a heroine. You want to give them something, because these people out here, the customers, they are paying for your story, and you have to give them something of value for that story. So you want to give them that escape, but you also want to give them that laugh. You always want to give them that action and adventure. You want to give them something for their money, and even more precious, their time, because people's time is extremely precious, and people hate to waste their time with a really bad story or a really boring story. So that's something I always think about before I even go out here and put the fingers to the keyboard, because I understand it's that people's time is extremely precious. So I want to give them the very best story so that they can enjoy themselves in the time that they take to either read something as small as an ISIS series book or as large as a novel like The Thetas. So I want to give those readers something for their money and something for their time. But whenever you're writing a heroine, you really, again, want to focus on those traits that make that character's foundation strong. And this is one of the big problems I see with a lot of comic book heroines, and it was something I saw when I was reading Stan Lee's Superhero Women. Now, one of the things that I read, I hadn't read it until later on, like 2009 or so. That's when I finally got a copy of Stan Lee's Superhero Women. And that's where I started to see a lot of intrinsic flaws as it related to the creation of a lot of comic book heroines. Now, when it comes down to a lot of these comic book heroines, a lot of creators focus on the character's look and they focus on the external, but then they don't focus on the internal the way romance novelists and fantasy novelists usually, and women's fiction novelists usually do. Now, when it comes down to fantasy novelists, women's novelists, romance novelists, we have to usually focus on those internal traits, because we understand that if people are going to come in for those 300 pages, we have to keep them glued for 300 pages, and then we have to go out here and sell the next novel. But when I came down to the comic stories that I had read, the women were often flat, they were often one-dimensional, sometimes two-dimensional as it varied, but there was not really much there in terms of personality. There was not much there in terms of voice, and it really didn't speak to me as a reader. And I always said to myself, you want to speak to the reader when you have a story. You want the characters to speak to them. Because I remember being a kid reading comic books, and the ones that were written very well, the Chris Claremont X-Men, the David Michelinie Iron Mans, and many other books, Marv Wolfman Teen Titans, they spoke back to me, and the characters spoke with their own voices. So whenever I read one of those comics, they would speak to me. But when it came down to many of these comics that featured these superhero heroines in lead roles, they wouldn't speak to me, and it was a struggle sitting there trying to read them because the characters just weren't developed very well. An example of that was the book called Claws of the Cat, which I read in Superhero Women, and this was a terrible comic for its time. It was supposed to be a statement about feminism and strong women, but it didn't have anything that related to the internal character traits that would make a character like a Peter Parker resonate with the character. Now, I sat there and I read all the heroines in there, and again, there was just no depth, no layers, and it just didn't resonate. So when I looked at it, I said, they don't really write these heroines very well. Yes, they focused on a great costume, they've got focused on great powers, but there's nothing there that makes me say, I want to spend more money on this comic or pick up the next issue. And whenever you're writing heroines, you want people to go out here and after they read the first book, go out here and pick up the next book. So that's something you really want to focus on when you're writing strong heroines. Now, a lot of people, they focus on the powers, but then the powers should not be your primary focus. Again, it should be that foundation I talked about. And after you build that foundation, then you can focus on the powers, because what empowers the character is going to be those internal character traits, and it's going to be those internal character traits that are going to show you how that character can use their powers in a creative fashion. Now, when it comes down to a character like an Isis or an Eastine, they have a basic set of powers. As goddesses, they have the ability to fly, they have the ability to teleport, they have invulnerability, and they have super strength. But again, it's not the powers that make the character compelling for readers to pick up from story to story. It is the way they empower themselves from their internal character traits that make the character so compelling that you want to see more of that character. So whenever you have a character, if they have a strong personality and a strong voice, and they are very charismatic, that's what's going to drive readers to continue reading the character. And I saw that firsthand when I did a story called Eastine No Good Deed, and with the Eastine series. The Eastine character, yes, she has a basic set of powers as the devilish diva, but what drives her stories is how creative she is at using her powers. And also what drives the story is she has a great personality, that devil may care attitude, and how creatively and resourcefully she overcomes the bad guys. Like in stories like Little Girl Lost or Witches of Eastland, where your Eastine had to deal with different challenges. That's what really drives the character. And in Isis series stories, where we have the Isis character, what really drives the character is her internal character trait as the goddess next door. She wants to go out here and help people. She wants to help people do their best. And she cares about people. So that drives that character internally. And that's what makes the character relatable as a heroine. And her obstacle, and that helps her not only relate to the reader, but it helps her overcome the obstacles in creative fashions. Because in stories like your samurai goddess or your all that glitters, we see the character of Isis overcoming obstacles and challenges because of the internal things that drive her. In the same way, we would see a Matilda Crowley overcome bullies inside of a story like Spellbound. So the things that drive the characters are from the internal, and that helps us see the external. That's something that I try to do whenever I do a story featuring heroines, is have that internal driving the external. And because the internal traits are driving the external, what's happening is that's what helps us see the action, and that's what makes for a very fun and compelling story featuring that character. So that's the thing that I do when I'm writing heroines. And when I'm writing heroines, I just have fun when I'm writing heroines because I always, again, try to write women that I would like to spend time with and women I believe my readers would want to spend time with. So I always go out of my way to go out here and create the kind of Black women I would want to either date, marry, or hang out with. And I believe that's what leads to you having a character heroine that goes out here and sells very strongly. When I look at it, people, they're taking time out of their day, and you have to make them want to spend time out of their day with that character. So that's what you want from a heroine, and that's something that I'm not seeing companies like Marvel, DC, Image, or even the Lucasfilm do with their heroines. Now they want to go out here and push this whole strong women thing, and where I see the mistake they're making in pushing so-called strong women is trying to shove these women down people's throats instead of letting us get to know these women and letting us connect with those women on a human level. What they want to do is tell us how great these women are instead of letting these women show us how great they are. And that's something that I try to do, again, in novels like Spellbound, in books like the Isis series, and even my earlier books, like the Cassandra Cookbook, is not try to tell you how great this character is. I let the character show you how great they are by their actions, because action is the thing that defines a heroine's character. And it's that action that makes us see that this heroine is someone we can see as someone we love and care about, and someone we, again, want to be friends with. And that being friends with the heroine is important if you hope to generate any sort of sales, because we have to see that heroine, again, as a friend, as a girlfriend, or a wife, in order for us to go out here and buy those books on the regular. So that's something that I don't see going on at Marvel and DC, or especially Marvel these days with Sana Amanat. What I see with Sana Amanat is her trying to shove this heroine down your throat, and I see her trying to bully you into liking this heroine, but that's not what's going to make a reader go out here and pick up the next book. What's going to make a reader pick up the next book is them seeing this heroine as someone they want to spend time with, and see this heroine as someone they want to have a relationship with. Because when it comes down to a lot of the other romance novelists, they understand this. They understand that the heroine has to be someone they see themselves in, and that they see this person as someone they want to root for. And that's another part of writing heroines, is that we have to root for this character. We have to rally behind this character, and we have to like them so much that we read their stories and we enjoy them, and then we want to go pick up the next story featuring those heroines. So we want to have that type of story, because that's what's going to get people buying more books featuring that character. I'm going to take another look at the chat. Looking at Devon. Hi, how you doing? A Dude's Thoughts comes up with a great point. Yeah, that's one thing that they do, is they try to make the characters strong, and that's not how you make a character strong. Again, you make them strong from the internal strength of character here, and that's what really makes us really connect with that person. And what I see with yeah, that is a Moon Knight. That's the new Moon Knight. I got that as a gift from one of my family members. Would I make a comic series featuring Bass Reeves? I can't do that because I don't have the rights to that. I can only make stuff that I have the rights to. But when it comes down to writing heroines, you really want them to be people that are just like us, people that we connect with. And again, that's how you get people coming back for the next book. And this is the big problem with comic book companies and heroines. They'll make them, again, visually attractive, but they won't make them internally attractive. And it's that internal attraction that draws readers to continue buying their books. So that's stuff that people want to see in a story with a heroine. They want those internal traits. They want that relationship with those characters. And that's what women want, and that's what men want as well. Men want a woman that they either want to date or they want to marry, and women want a woman who they could see as a best friend. And some women, they want to see themselves as that character, and they see so many identifiable traits in that character that they see something in the character they want to admire. And again, that goes back to the whole friendship thing. And that's not something I saw when I remember reading Captain Marvel #1 a while back. I didn't see a woman that I would want to be friends with. I didn't see a woman I wanted to date. I didn't see a woman that had any sort of traits that I could care about whatsoever in that story. All I saw was a very obnoxious person, a very arrogant person, and just someone who is somebody you could just turn you off almost immediately. And the same thing with your Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel. I remember reading her book. I saw another very arrogant, obnoxious person that I wouldn't want to spend any time with. So with both of those characters, they're trying to push this diversity initiative, but what's killing it is these characters, again, have no internal traits that make you say, I like this person, I care about this person, and I want to spend time with this person. Good morning, Chris. And that's something that I used to see in Marvel Comics with She-Hulk, the Rogue, the original Ms. Marvel, when she was being written well, when she was written halfway decent. But with Rogue, I saw it with Jubilee, I saw it with Storm, and I saw it especially with She-Hulk. All those characters, especially She-Hulk during the Byrne run, she was just an incredibly likable person. She was just fun to be around. And that gave you a reason to go out here and buy her books on the regular. I mean, the John Byrne She-Hulk is one series I could highly recommend because it was just a lot of fun to read. I mean, you could pick up a John Byrne She-Hulk and it gave you laughs, it gave you action, and it gave you an attractive woman who had a bit of a devil-may-care attitude. And I took a lot of that when I was doing the Eastine character, and I applied to the character because I liked those traits. And it made the series just that much more fun. You have this heroine who was going out here. She was a very fun woman. She was a very attractive woman. She cared about people. And we saw all of this in the story, and that's what made the character a fan favorite. Now, when it comes down to story models for heroines, this is where comic book companies tend to fail, because what they try to do is they try to apply a male story model to a heroine, not understanding that men and women are completely different. Now, men and women, again, they're different because men are logical and women are emotional. And whenever you do a story model for a woman, it has to be different than you would for a man. And in comic books, what they try to do is apply that man's story model to a woman. And that's why many of these books just fail to resonate and catch on, because you have this woman acting extremely masculine. And when you have a masculine acting woman, most men find that to be completely unattractive, and even some women find it to be completely unattractive. Heterosexual men and women find a woman acting like a man to be extremely unattractive. What they want to see is a woman being strong like a woman, and they want to see a story that shows the strength of women from a woman's perspective. They want to see the positive traits of what makes a woman strong, not some masculine acting female who wants to try to compete with the other men. And I remember reading the original Ms. Marvel run, and that was one of the things that really irritated me about it, was we saw this masculine acting female, And that turned a lot of people away from that character. However, when Chris Claremont did Rogue, she was acting feminine, and that's what made that character a fan favorite. So I understand that there's a big difference between the two, and you want to show, yes, strength. Like Isis has super strength, Eastine has super strength, but whenever I write those characters, I never have them trying to compete with the men. I always try to have them supporting the men, and that's what makes them appealing to readers, is that they show how they're going to go out here and support the men. Because again, your core audience, especially when you're writing fantasy and science fiction, is going to be men. And again, those men want a woman who is going to be a girlfriend or a wife, and show how she's going to support people in their lives. And that's what they want to see in a heroine. They don't want to see a masculine acting female who is acting like a man. That's something that just irritates men and women. They want to see how this woman is going to go out here and show her strength as a woman. Who was the best Wonder Woman writer, Supremo? I'd have to say the people during the Perez run were fairly solid, but that's the one I would think would be the best writers, because that's the one, as I started reading it, was very solid, and they showed Diana's strength of character, and they also showed how strong she was as a woman. But in the second place, I would say the people who wrote the Diana Prince Wonder Woman in the beginning. But that whole Diana Prince concept, a lot of people, they pan that concept. But after reading the trades myself, I saw what they were trying to do. They were trying to show that even without her powers, that she had that internal strength. But the whole thing just fell apart. If they had stayed with the Dr. Cyber and had Dr. Cyber beat up Wonder Woman, they would have probably taken that character to another level as a powerless heroine, by showing that Diana had power from her internal traits. So when it comes down to heroines, that's something you want to do, again, with them showing the internal traits. But with the story model, you have to understand that, again, men are logical, and when it comes down to the hero's journey as it relates to men want to see a hero beating the bad guy. Whereas when it comes down to women, yes, they want to overcome challenges and accomplish the goals, but the way they interact with villains is completely different. Now, when it comes down to a man fighting a man, he wants to beat that man physically, because when it comes down to men, it's all about competition. Where, for example, like with Reed Richards and Dr. Doom wants to prove he's intellectually superior to Reed Richards. And that's why he hatches all of these world domination schemes, because inside the back of his mind, he knows that Reed Richards was always smarter than he was, and he wants to prove that he can be smarter than Reed Richards. So he wants to beat Reed Richards mentally. Now, when it comes down to a woman, everything is a bit more emotional, and everything is a lot more personal. And this is another point that a lot of writers miss out on whenever they're writing heroines, is they don't understand that women tend to take things a lot more personally. And because they take things personally, then they don't want to compete with the person. They want to hurt the person. And hurting the person is what makes them feel good. And again, women are emotional, so they feel, and they want to feel something when they win. So that's how they get their victory. And I made a point of that in the Isis series stories, Isis, Amari's Revenge, and Isis, that's Ultimate Fight, Isis, My Sister, My Frenemy. Now, in Isis, My Sister, My Frenemy, which is a story I recommend that you get to see how a woman can hurt someone, you have to read this story, because in this story, we have Isis who's dealing with her feelings regarding Eastine. She's just reconciled with her, and she's trying to figure out whether she can trust the former she-demon Eastine, who has just turned good, and she doesn't know if she can trust her. And then she's just dealt with this rejection, and that from getting her dream job, she doesn't get her dream job. She lashes out at Eastine, and then later on realizes how much she's hurting Eastine by not trusting her, and after an encounter with Delilah, Eastine's arch enemy. And that leads to a major scene in the story where we see what happens when a woman wants to hurt another woman, because hurting another woman is something that is key to your stories that feature heroines and villainesses, especially with villainesses, because villainesses want to hurt heroines. And that's all part of their arch enemy dynamic, is that a woman does not want to beat another woman. A woman wants to hurt another woman. And in Isis, My Sister, My Frenemy, Delilah hurts Eastine by revealing something as related to her family. And that's the thing that makes Isis realize how much she needs to show Eastine love, because Eastine is adopted by the New Heliopolitan gods and needs their love in order to continue moving forward. So she understands that, instead of trying to hurt Eastine like Delilah does, she needs to show Eastine love and show her sister the love, and stop being a frenemy and start being a friend to her sister. So that's the thing that made this story very compelling for a lot of readers. And another story that I did, Isis the Beauty Myth, I also deal with the whole concept of a woman hurting another woman. In this story where the Dr. Rahima Sanders kidnaps Isis and wants to find out the secrets of her beauty, what she does is she wants to hurt Isis, and that starts the relationship between Isis and Rahima, the feud between them, because that's another key component to writing heroines. Is you have to understand that when it comes down to women, women have relationships with other women, and that's what builds the foundation for their rivalry. So whenever you have two women facing off against each other, this is the start of their relationship. And their relationship, again, is not about competing with each other. It's about hurting the other woman. And Rahima wants to hurt Isis because she has this beauty that she covets, and she has this immortality that she covets, and she wants to show that she can get the same beauty that Isis has. She can't get the secrets from her, so she uses science to give her a similar beauty, and that was explored in, let me see if I can find it, the follow-up story, Isis Wrath of the Cyber Goddess, where she takes this technology to make herself beautiful, but then again, that's all about hurting Isis, and it's all about hurting her in a way that makes her feel better about herself. Because when it comes down to women, they want to hurt each other. They want to hurt another woman. And that's how women get power over other women. And that's how they get some power over other men. Because again, it's all about the relationship they have with each other. And it's all about them having power in that relationship. Thank you, Devon Williams. Bill Walko designed this is the first cover Bill Walko designed for the Isis series. And people like this cover. And when I first did it, it was a hard sell. But in these days, people love this cover, and more people are starting to like this cover. But this was the follow-up to Isis the Beauty Myth. And again, this was about that relationship between Isis and Rahima Sanders, and that relationship where they become arch enemies. And that story, again, was about one woman looking to hurt another woman, and a woman wanting to hurt another woman because she had something she coveted. Now, Rahima wanted Isis's beauty, she wanted her immortality, and she wanted to hurt Isis. Now, with Eastine, it was a different rivalry. She had a rivalry with Delilah, and again, Delilah wanted to hurt Eastine, and she wanted to hurt Eastine because she felt like her mother admired Eastine too much, and she felt like her mother was being taken away from her by Delilah felt like her mother was being taken away from her. So that character dealt with a different type of hurt, and she wanted to hurt the Eastine character, and she had a feud with Eastine over several stories, and all of them culminated with Eastine Ascension, where we finally see the Eastine character realizing what the Delilah character wanted to do to her at the end of the story. So what she wanted to do to Eastine was she really wanted to hurt her so badly because she felt hurt about not being able to get close to her mother. And she felt like her mother didn't love her because she kept putting this Eastine, the idea of Eastine that she knew from the history books, on a pedestal. And that was what led to her having that rivalry and that feud. Now, that's the core thing. That's the difference between a heroine story and a hero's story. Because again, heroes, they're overcoming villains because of competition, and they're coming at them from a competitive point, and that's what leads to them to want to win. But when it comes down to women, women want to win on an emotional thing. They want to win based on hurting that person or getting that person's love. And that's what makes romance novels very compelling to women, like a Spinsterella, because in Spinsterella, you have Matilda, who's trying to get the attention of the quiet man, and she wants to win the love of the quiet man. And that's because that's what she wants to get on an emotional level. She wants to connect on that emotional level. And that's what women want from men, and that's what they want from women. But we don't see this in comics because a lot of comic writers, they try to make the heroine just like a man. And when you try to make the heroine just like a man, you try to make them masculine, what happens is the audience gets turned off because they see this masculine acting female and they automatically say, this character is just not attractive to them. And you want the reader to be attracted to a character, because when you have an attractive heroine like an Eastine or an Isis, you really want them to not only connect with the visual, but you want them to connect with them on that personal level. Benny G asked about a John Haynes Isis crossover. Yeah, we had a John Haynes Isis crossover, and that was done in the Vampire arc, which was Bride of Dracula and Escape from Transylvania. And it was also done, I gotta find that book. It was done in Night of the Vampires as well. So those were the three books that featured the John Haynes arc, that were part of the John Haynes arc, and this was part of the John Haynes crossover. And this was where we started to see the John Haynes Isis relationship. And that also ties into relationships, because relationships and heroines, they are key to each other, because women want relationships with men primarily, and they want to see women want to see themselves at the side of a very handsome man, a very attractive man, and they want to spend time with a cool guy. So that's something they also want to see. And that was something I put in the Eastine series, where I show, Eastine is the assistant to John Haynes, and that was something that I took from DC Comics, Lois Lane Comics, because that's where I got part of the story model for Eastine, was I took that from Lois Lane. Now, most people will think Lois Lane comics are incredibly stupid and incredibly boring, but when I started reading Lois Lane comics, I started to say to myself, there's a reason why they wrote that story model the way that they did, because they were trying to appeal to, one, young girls, and two, they were trying to appeal to young women and the things that women found to be attractive in the personality traits that women like. So I took part of Eastine's model for Lois Lane, and I took another part from Monster High. Now, Monster High, that was one of the things that I really loved watching. I used to love watching Monster High cartoons about 8-9 years ago, and Monster High cartoons, they also showed us what was great about a woman. They showed us what was great about girls, and they showed us what was fun about girls and what made them likable. Now, Monster High dolls, many people would say that they're ghoulish, but I liked them because of the internal traits of the characters. They were just likable, nice people, and you wanted to spend more and more time with them. And that was one of the fun things about Monster High, was you got to spend time with people that you liked watching and seeing. Until they came out with that awful reboot, it was chugging along fine. But that was one of the things that inspired the story model for the E-Steam character, was Monster High and Lois Lane. And I fused them together to come up with the whole idea of Monster High all grown up, and showing you a grown-up monster working in the real world. That was another thing that I wanted to do to make it relatable, and it turned out to be quite the success when I did the E-Steam No Good Deed, because that book, ebook, even though it was like 4 or 5 pages long, got over 3,000 downloads when I released it, and that showed me, that the character was viable. Thank you, Benny, for the donation. Eric, I'm good. I'm doing a live stream where I'm talking about strong heroines, and I'm talking about the things that lead to making a strong heroine. So I'm going in depth on it, because when I look at a lot of Marvel comics and DC comics today, and even some of the indies, they write heroines with great concepts, but then they don't put the internal things there that make the characters resonate with the reader. And again, I'm talking in depth because I come from the background of not only writing heroines in fantasy, but I've written them in other genres like romance, like women's fiction, and even screenplays. And I have this range, so I understand what readers want in a heroine, but I'm not seeing it in comics today. And because I don't see it in comics, that's why I want to go out of my way to do a live stream to teach it, because I see so many comics out there, like your Kamala Khan Ms. Marvel, like your Squirrel Girl and your Captain Marvel, where you have these editors like Sana Amanat, they want to push the so-called strong women, but then they don't understand what makes a woman strong to the reader. And what I'm doing the SJS Direct heroines is I want to give people a heroine that shows what's great about being a woman, and not try to show them a woman trying to be like a man, because that's one of the things that winds up making a lot of these, what they call SJW comics, unreadable, is they go out here and they try to make this heroine like a man, and then in some cases they try to make her try to replace a man, like in the case of Riri Williams. Now, Riri Williams, she was a character that really irritated a lot of people, because here you have this teenage girl who's going to sit there and try to replace Tony Stark, a hero who has been in comics for over 50 years. And that really alienated a lot of people, because you have this teenage girl, yeah, she went to MIT and she's a genius, but there's nothing internally there that makes us like this woman. And her coming into a man's place makes the male readers further dislike her, because here you have this young woman who has not gone out here and paid dues, and she has not earned the reader's respect. And that's another thing that you want to do with a heroine, is show how that heroine wants to come in here and earn respect. And I did that in 3 books actually. With this storyline, Bride of Dracula and Escape from Transylvania, we see the Isis character coming in and trying to earn John Haynes' respect. And we also see it, I gotta go find the book, Amari's Revenge. We see the Isis character trying to earn the respect of her prince, Prince Aman, and she shows respect for the authority of the prince, and she shows respect for the throne of Nubia. And we also see it with Eastine, The Sands of Time, where the Princess Eastine shows her respect for the male authority and male authority figures like the Pharaoh Osiris and the kingdom, and she shows respect for them, and that's what makes her relatable to, again, both men and women. Women want to see a woman who is going to show respect for men, and she's going to show respect for others, and she's going to go out here and try to earn respect. And when it comes down to many of the so-called SJW heroines, they don't go out of their way to try to show how they're going to be team players or how they are going to try to earn the respect of others who have gone out here and put in the work. Now, I remember a week ago, I was reading Amazing Spider-Man Annual 16, which was the first appearance of Monica Rambeau. And after reading that book, I saw where this heroine was trying to earn respect. And she came to the heroes looking for help, and she was looking for, and after she got help for her issue with her powers, she then went to the Avengers and wanted to learn from the Avengers. So she came from a position of looking to earn respect. And that was something that people want to see in a heroine. They want to see a heroine who is going to go out here and, again, earn her part in the team and earn her place in the universe. And that was something that I always did when I was writing any sort of heroine, is showing that that character had to earn what they got and earn their powers or earn their abilities. And they had to overcome challenges like Eastine did when she got her brand new powers in Ascension. In Ascension, she gets brand new powers, and she had to earn them by overcoming Delilah, who had just gained her old powers. So whenever I write a heroine, I always show them trying to earn things like respect or earn through an accomplishment. And that's what helps the readers relate to the character. And it also shows that this character is somebody who wants to grow, somebody who wants to change, and somebody that, again, wants to achieve like everybody else, and they're willing to pay dues. Now, when it comes down to the so-called SJW heroes, like your Kamala Khan and like your Captain Marvel, they just want to show up and say they've got the power, but that's not how you do things. Again, when it comes down to a heroine, they have to show how they want to be a part of the team and how they want to contribute. Because if you're going to be a hero and you're going to help other people, it's not about you, it's about the other people. And you have to earn people's respect and you have to earn people's trust. And that was something that always was a part of the Superman character. He always was a friend, and he was also trying to earn people's trust. I remember watching Superman Legacy years ago when Darkseid had corrupted Superman's mind and had him going out here doing all these horrible things. And Superman was hurt because he wanted to earn people's trust back. And at the end of the finale, he said that he wanted to go out here and earn people's trust because that meant something to him. And when it comes down to heroines, I don't see that. All I see is an entitled mindset, especially from your characters like your Squirrel Girls, your Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvels, and your Captain Marvels, is they don't want to pay, they don't want to earn anything, and they feel entitled to everything. And that's something that makes it where, again, the reader looks at that character and they start seeing them as a stuck-up little snot and not a person they want to spend time with. Because, when, again, from a publisher's perspective, you want that reader to spend time with your characters. You want them to spend time with them because that's how you make money. Because every book that you release, whether it be one of these $7.99 East-Team series books or one of these $18 novels like Spellbound, you want the reader to want to spend time with that character, and you want the reader to spend money on the next book. And in order to do that, you have to show us why we should like this character, why we should want to spend time with this character, and most importantly, why we should care about that character. And when the character is acting like a spoiled, entitled person filled with narcissism, like a Captain Marvel or a Kamala Khan or a Squirrel Girl, that doesn't give a reader a reason to go out here and put money on the table for their stories. And you want the reader to go out here to spend their money because they want to, again, give them something that wants them to earn, to get that money. So a lot of these people, they come at it from a sense of entitlement. They feel like, oh, I made this minority character or I made this heroine, and that's not enough. I'm sorry, it's just not enough. You have to give the reader more than that. You have to give them something they want, and you have to give them a person they want to spend time with, because again, this is their money, and you have to give them a character they want to spend time with. And that's the thing that I'm not seeing in comics, and I haven't seen it in the old books like I saw in Superhero Women, and I'm still not seeing it even in a lot of comics today. And if the problem is, a lot of people they're not really looking at comic heroines in the way that romance novelists and women's fiction novelists do, and that's really impeding a lot of comic sales today. That's why they can't really get up off the ground. They can't get any traction, and it doesn't matter what genre they do, they just have problems with it. Now, I remember as I was doing research on the failures of superhero women, I remember a line of comics called DC Comics Minx, where they were trying to fuse young adult and comics together to create these manga-esque graphic novels. And the entire imprint imploded within a year, again, because they just didn't know how to write heroines. And I remember just looking at this book, which has this beautiful Josh Howard art, but the story just was absolutely terrible. I mean, the heroine in the story, she was just an unlikable person. And again, this book is like 150 pages. And if you have 150 pages, and you're asking people to spend $10, people want to have a value to that. They want to spend time with someone who they like. And they did. And with this character, they gave us an unlikable character. And that character didn't give us a reason to go out here and buy these Minx books. And the whole Minx line wound up tanking. This was supposed to be a line for girls, but the line fell completely apart because they just didn't understand the story model for manga, and they didn't understand the story model for great storytelling featuring heroines. Now, when it comes down to heroines, again, the model for storytelling is different because, again, men are logical, women are emotional. And when you're writing a heroine, you have to think from the perspective of the heroine being emotional, and you have to also think about the heroine story model being completely different than that of a male character. Now, a male character, again, they want to help people for reasons as in their sense of obligation and responsibility, whereas when women go out to help people, it's about supporting others and helping to care for others. So that's the big difference, and I always try to apply that when I'm doing storytelling, because whenever I do a story like The Man Who Rules the World or The Temptation of John Haynes, I focus on the character of John Haynes very differently than I would a character like an Isis or an Eastie. Now, with John Haynes, his feuds with Lucifer are not personal. They are about showing that he's going to be a strong example of Christ, or a man who follows Christ. And with the Lucifer versus Eastie feud, it's about him trying to get her soul back. And with the Isis character, the goddess next door, it's about her looking to serve and help others and go where she's needed to help serve others. So all three characters, they have different story models and they have different approaches to storytelling, but the male story models are related towards things related to the male character traits and the way men operate, whereas the stories for women relate to the way women think and operate. And with all of those models, I have had some success with readers, because when readers read the stories, again, I remember getting a review on this novel, The Thetas, where a woman told me that they were surprised that a man could write a woman so well. They were like, I was reading the story and I didn't know that a man wrote this, but I was able to write it because, again, I understand the difference between writing a heroine and writing a hero. And this story, which was a whole women's fiction book, was just all women, and it was written so well to people they were surprised that a man could write a book featuring women so well. But that's what happens when you understand the difference between writing a heroine and writing a hero. And writing a strong heroine isn't about physical power, it's about showing what makes a woman internally strong. And that's something I tried to do with the Colleen Anderson character in the Thetas, and it was something I did with the Matilda Crowley character in Spellbound, was show you how these women were strong, not by having physical power, but by having internal character traits as related to their internal character. With the Colleen character, it was about learning how to build the character and resolve to stand up as a woman. And with the Matilda Crowley character, it was about learning how to build the self-confidence and self-worth to be who she wanted to be. And that was being a part of the goth subculture. As she came into the goth subculture, she started to develop confidence. She just started to develop a sense of worth, and she just started to develop a seeing a value in herself. And that was something that I wanted to explore with that character. And in depth, I wanted to show that what made these heroines strong was not physical, but internal. Supremo asked me, is John Haynes a mystical character? When it comes down to the John Haynes character, he's a supernatural character. He deals with supernatural forces and he deals with supernatural challenges. His main arch enemy is Lucifer, and he deals with vampires, demons, and monsters. So he's more of a supernatural character, and that transitions organically into Eastein's series because she was a she-demon, and it transitions into Isis's book because Isis is a Nubian goddess. So all of them work together in the SJS Direct universe from an organic fashion, and that's how they come together. And it started again with me writing heroines, and that's something that I think I'm an expert on because I've been writing heroines for a good 20 years, and I know how they work, and that's one of the things I want to do with this live stream. Jad Sadu is asking me for my email. But that's one of the things I learned writing heroines over the years is, again, things as related to the characters. And I also learned about the story model. Again, story model is completely different for women than it is for men. And this is something that many of these comic pros who are writing comics these days, they don't really want to focus on, because they want to get these characters as popular as the men, and they want to get them over like the men. But what they don't understand is what is going to get the character over with readers is seeing this character as someone like themselves. And most people don't know any girls who act like your Captain Marvel or your Kamala Khan. And if they do know people like that, they automatically get turned off when they see that kind of woman, because that type of woman is abrasive, that woman is rude, or if they're in the cases of a Squirrel Girl, that's a person who's just so annoying, you don't want to spend any time with that person. And that's why their comics suffer in terms of sales. It's like, I don't want to spend time with this person. I don't want to go out with this person. And I don't want to go out of my way to even be around this person, because when it comes down to comic books are not sold in grocery stores, bodegas, drugstores, and newsstands anymore. People have to actually go seek them out at comic book stores, or they have to go online to a place like a Comixology to go pick up their books. And if they have to go out of their way to go pick up their books, then they're not going to do that with an obnoxious, really irritating person. So you think somebody's going to go out of their way to do more for someone if that person isn't showing them respect? And it's like, no, the answer to that is no. And when I look at books like your Squirrel Girls, your America Chavez's, your Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvels, and your Captain Marvels, those books do not give a reader a reason to actually go out and seek them out, because this isn't a person who is relatable. This isn't a person who is likable. This isn't a person who we care about. And it's really sad at Marvel, they don't understand this. You have $1 billion company, and they don't understand that people are going to seek out people who they like, and they're going to seek out people they want to be friends with, and people who are nice to them and friendly with them. So when I would go out here, and I remember when I was putting East Team for free on Smashwords, and I was like getting 300 downloads, like I did a story called Demons Anonymous, and that story is still free on Smashwords, and people were downloading it like crazy because the East Team character was a friend. And I remember I did Little Girl Lost, and I had offered it for free on Smashwords and digital, and people were sharing that story because, again, I was giving you a story of a heroine, and she was someone we wanted to spend time with. And that's something that people at Marvel, they just don't get. They're still trying to reboot these characters when the problems with the characters is their internal traits and their internal platforms, and they don't want to work on developing their internal traits in a way that makes them relatable to readers. I mean, you can reboot Captain Marvel 12 times like Marvel has, or Ms. Marvel 5 times, or Squirrel Girl 3 times, and you're still going to have no sales because nobody likes this character, because they're not a friend to them. They're not somebody they care spending time with. And with the price of a comic being $5, they're not somebody they want to spend money on. I mean, $5 is a lot of money. And for $5, and for you put $3 more with it, you can pick up the newest ISIS series book, All That Glitters, in paperback, or you can pick up the older books like East Team Ascension in paperback. And you can get these books again for $8, and they have twice the amount of story that your 32-page comic has. So these comic publishers, they're shooting themselves in the foot. They're raising their prices. They're giving you characters you don't like, and then they're expecting you to spend time with people you don't like when you can spend time with people you could like in the case of ISIS and East Team, or people or stories that people really like Matilda Crawling and Spellbound. Yes, this book is $18, but it features a character people like, people want to spend time with, and people want to see their story all the way through. And that's the whole thing that many of the so-called SJW comic pros don't really understand about heroines. They don't understand that the things that make a heroine great are, again, internal and make us like them internally, and that in order to get people to buy a book featuring a strong heroine, we need to see that strength of internal character. Because, again, when I think of a character like a Spider-Man, what drives Spider-Man was that sense of responsibility to others and understanding that he had to use his power in a responsible fashion. And, oh, hi, Tyler Robinson. Glad to see you. And that's what makes us like them. So I don't see that type of depth or development on female heroines. And again, this is why they just don't sell as well. Smiley Man asks, is there a coming new John Haynes book? Yes, there is going to be a new John Haynes book. Dark Succubus will be coming later this year. The book is fully edited, and all I need to do is work out a concept, and I'm hoping that Mike Williams is available because I want to hire him to do the Dark Succubus cover. That's a job that he is guaranteed to get if he's available for it, because the Dark Succubus book is finished. It's just ready to go. All I'm waiting to do is get the cover on it. But right now, you can get the ISIS All That Glitters in paperback right now. But a new John Haynes is coming. And if you want to get caught up on John Haynes, you can pick up The Temptation of John Haynes and The Man Who Rules the World. I'm going to try to leave a link to some of these books. But I'm hoping that YouTube works out, because and let's see. Okay, Temptations link. I put Temptations link in the chat so you can pick up Temptation of John Haynes. And you can also get Man Who Rules the World. Hold on 1 second. Link's not coming up. Oh. That's the whole thing on YouTube. They give you error messages. Have I considered writing an ISIS or John Haynes set in the far future? I haven't considered it because right now I'm just trying to lay the foundations for the SJS Direct universe. If I have time, maybe I might do something like that. But right now I'm just trying to build the foundation for the universe. I can't seem to post the Man Who Rules the World link, but I'm going to try to post some other ones. Try to post the one for... Try this Bride of Dracula link. I'll see if I can get this one up. That's giving me error messages, but you can get all the books on Amazon.com from... I don't know what my next appearance on Obsidian Radio is going to be. It's up to Obsidian. If he invites me on the show, I will definitely come back on the show. We're supposed to come back. I'm supposed to try to talk. I was going to talk to him about that. But if he invites me on the show again, I will do another show. Would I come to Canada? I would have to work out things related to my past. Not really. I mean, I don't have that type of money right now. As everybody knows, I've been out of work for some time. The only way I make money is through selling books on the SJS Direct imprint. So I'd have to sell a lot more books in order to finance a trip to Canada. But I do have a lot of Canadian readers, and I try to reach out to them. A lot of Canadian people have bought my books. I had several people in Canada buy Spinsterella Trilogy books. I've had some buy ISIS series books. I've had them buy E-Steam series books because I look at my sales numbers every day, and I do see the foreign and international numbers as related to sales. And yes, people do buy my books in Canada. They've been buying a lot of them. Last month, I had several people pick up Spinsterella Trilogy books. Would I consider making a biography? Or a successful one I've had is Misadventures of Captain Savaho. That one did 3,000. Would I visit Japan? It's the same thing as Canada. I would have to get my passport straightened out, and then I would have to get the money right. If they were willing to pay for it, like the hotels and everything, I would visit Japan. I'd probably come back with a whole bunch of Japanese import toys, like Hot Toys and all that stuff, because I like Hot Toys and all those other import brands. Would I consider doing book signings in New York? Yeah, I would do book signings here in New York. It just takes a store making an offer to me, and I would gladly do a book signing here in New York. But when it comes down to bookstores, they really don't like print-on-demand offers unless they're selling lots of books, because they don't want to get stuck with a lot of inventory. So I would need to sell at least a couple thousand books in order to even get considered for a bookstore book signing. So in order to get a book signing, I have to sell more books, and that means I have to get more people out here. Would I have any plans to get a booth at Comic-Con? That's been something I wanted to do for years, and it's just related to money, and I really haven't had the money to go out and do it. I've always wanted to do NYCC, or what they call New York Comic-Con. I believe I could get a big audience in New York Comic-Con, and that's something that I would love to do. Just have a booth, and I would love to do the Schaumburg show. I made inquiries into doing the Schaumburg show with the Black Comic Book Expo